Welcome to Better Business Building, where I'm your host, Adem Manderovic, where I talk to business leaders from all shapes of life about what's worked for them and how they can help you win.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show, Jessie. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Long time in the making, and I'm excited to have you on here because we share a lot of the same perspectives. But just for the listeners that may not know who you are and what you do, tell us a little bit more about what you do.
So I am the Chief Marketing Officer at BDEX during the day. And we, help marketers with their data, put simply, with their first party data. And so we do identity resolution, and we can help you expand your audience, and help you understand your audience. We just rolled out actually a new app I'm really excited about, of course, because it helps us in the whole, demand gen funnel in terms of like allowing buyers to self-serve and sign up on their own. So that's Omni IQ that we have at BDEX. And people can come in, upload a CSV file of their first party data, their CRM data, and for free, they can see, the gender makeup, the household income, as well as the birth year of their audience. So it's just a starting point to starting to understand who your audience is. And then from there, you can, of course, learn more. If you upgrade, there's, so much you can learn in terms of like what people are purchasing, what they're buying, what their behaviors are. There's so much you can do to understand your audience, but then you can also expand it and go find, other people just like them based on 5,000 different segments, and trillions of data points. So check out bdex.com and you can see all of our numbers and why it's so impressive in terms of like what we can do with taking someone's data and help you learn from it. And so that's what I do during the day is marketing there at BDEX, also the co-host on the Deconstructing Data podcast with BDEX there. And then in the evenings, I work on Reveting, which is Whiskey Wednesday primarily. The original idea was to make it an agency, but that, is still up in the air about what we want to do there. But our promotional show that we started to promote Reveting is Whiskey Wednesday. And Whiskey Wednesday has ended up being this whole other thing. And we started it like in February, and just in September, we started taking sponsors. And that's when it sort of got a little more serious. And now we need to figure out what we really want to do with it. But we'll have our last show today. But yeah, I'm a marketer. I'm a revenue generator. I did do sales for a small little bit of time at previous company. And I do see how they go hand in hand. And I think that experience has been extremely helpful in terms of coming to where I am now with all of my opinions that you and I happen to agree on a lot.
Awesome. So firstly, everyone listening, don't miss Whiskey Wednesday today if you get a chance to listen to this before it airs this afternoon. More importantly, let's dig into what you said there about the data. So what you guys are doing there is, how can I say this? What sales dream that they could do. So in terms of the targeting.
What did you say? So what can sales dream that they could do?
Yeah. So a lot of the things that obviously you and I talk about is who owns what piece and why. So if that direction, you guys are already doing that, and sales are saying, we wish we could do that, but they don't know that a lot of marketing agencies and organizations are already doing that type of targeting, and it should sit with marketing. I see that it should be more top-down marketing-led growth is what I'm saying.
That's a really great point. Yes. And, I think that we're kind of, I don't know, are we at a transition point, or did this transition point, maybe for like the fast growth companies, this transition point happened a long time ago, but a lot of B2B companies are still, stuck with, older sales methods and even though they've adopted new marketing methods. And so, yeah, it does sort of create this place where we need to get everybody on board, right? Because we all should have one goal, revenue, and sharing tech stack and coming together to accomplish that goal. But I guess what I try to do, at least internally at BDEX, is continually, bring us together to talk about these things, because I do know that sales will on their own talk about targets and prospecting. And if I'm not in those conversations, then there's a misalignment.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we have, even us internally, we have to make sure that we're doing that. So I can't sit here and say like, we do it perfectly, because we don't, but we do recognize the need for it, and we try to make sure that it happens. And same for me, if I'm going to start, a new campaign, well, it should, first of all, like, we should all be starting with our marketing plan, right? Like, that's like, we're all planning for 2023. At least I'm still wrapping up planning for 2023. But like, that's where it starts. You got to do the basics. Sometimes I feel like people want to look over the basics. Like, what are the business goals? And then, what are the metrics that we're going to measure to try to accomplish those goals? And then like, what are we actually gonna measure here? We should get on the same page with that first. And then instead of just like going and starting 1,000 campaigns, maybe we have 3 campaigns, and from there we justify why we need all of these other tactics that are going on even below that. And I think a lot of the time when we're talking about target market, it can be random, like that should be something that's done in a marketing plan from the beginning as a team, ideally. And we should be driving that with data and understanding who has bought from us before and how can we go find more people like them, just like BDEX does for other companies. And so, yeah, I think that it comes down to planning and leadership, because you have to have a plan, but you do have to have leadership that'll bring all groups together to have these conversations.
So I'll dig into a little bit of that, if I may. So let's just unpack that. So why do you think that it is that sales traditionally, let's not talk about people doing demand gen and marketing plans that are end-to-end service delivery for the whole organization in terms of revenue alignment. Let's say that not those people. Let's talk about the 80% of everybody else. Why do you think that sales has no confidence to sit with heads of marketing and say, hey, or even listen to their lead? Hey, so that should look, tell me if I'm wrong. What that could or should look like is marketing says, these are the targets, these are the channels, this is the compelling reason why, this is the educational content that will strike them within the buying cycle, this is against the existing profiling of win-loss, this is against the existing best billers versus worst, and these are the ones that we would target, and this is how it's going to make it real for them, right? They give that to sales and say, do this, target this, send this, say this, and go further than that. If they also know on the back end in customer success what's going to cause no customer churn, that could be part of the plan. But why do you think that sales has no confidence to ask marketing to have that conversation in most organizations?
I think one is lack of planning. So one, if you have that plan in place and everybody knows what's happening and there's transparency and everyone has buy-in to that plan, then, there's going to be more trust. But then also I think that different goals, like sales will typically have more short-term goals, right? Marketing more long-term goals. And so, a lot of the times I think sales will look at what marketing's doing and be like, why are they even putting that out there? Like, who are they even writing to, And it's like, well, even if this blog isn't relevant, it's going to live on the internet forever. So like, just different goals. And I think there's a misalignment there, but I think it still just comes down to leadership, alignment, and everyone understanding what everyone's doing. So if marketing, is clear that, hey, here are the 3, major campaigns that we're going to be running. We're going to be testing some of these other tactics over here. So if you see some of that noise, let us know. Like if we're clear about what we're doing, then there's no surprises. But also if sales is clear about what they're doing, like they should technically have a smaller list. If they're doing enterprise type outreach, they're not going to bulk, the mass like we are. They're doing one-on-one and reaching out ideally with a sales sequence or a cadence where there's a system and a process of when we reach out with who, and then marketing also knows what they're doing and who they're reaching out to. And we can supplement that by including those audiences and different ad campaigns that make sense. And, you know, run a full account-based marketing plan, if that's what you want to call it. But yeah.
Yeah. But do you think that the reason that these underlining misalignments exist comes from sales-led growth models where sales tells marketing what they need and it's not top down around the other way?
I think, yeah. Clearly there's a transition happening, right? And it makes everybody uncomfortable. And Whiskey Wednesday kind of puts its finger right on that discomfort. So it draws a lot of attention, especially when we talk about things like, should marketing report to sales? Like we get requested every week, but like, honestly, that one triggers people. And especially when, you know, that sales-led model oftentimes brought in very, let's say, I don't want to say like aggressive, but like people who are, you know, type 1 type of people are doing sales, you know, and so like, I think it is a different, it's going to be a difficult transition. And ideally teams can work together and everybody can see, you know, see what's happening in the world, because the market has changed, right? That's what's happened. The pandemic happened, that sped all this up, but not to say it wasn't happening even before that. But yeah, I think that adjusting is hard. Change is hard. Even I have a hard time with change and adjusting. So like, first of all, we have to accept that it happened, and we have to accept that we need to move in this direction, you know, and then, you know, I think that from there it'll get easier. But again, it's just like, have the goal, have the planning, make sure everybody knows what's going on and everybody's communicated it to some degree, has some buy-in. And that makes these changes much easier.
Well, I think that you were very delicate in your articulation there. I already know what I think the answer is. And I look at it like this, right? You could solve your sales problem and your customer churn with proper marketing. So if that plan was all of those things, what's the compelling reason for the person that needs to see it? Where do they need to see it? On what channel? What's going to make it real for them? Does it outline the dream state? And does that show against any customer churn down the line? Here, do this. We wouldn't have these problems, because you wouldn't have people that are calling up companies and going, hey, mate, what would need to happen to make this happen? Let's just get this over the line today. I came from that, and then I went full circle going, well, hang on. If I just called and asked for permission to show them what should be within their buying cycle, because the data I've already ran and figured this out for myself, because they're going to be in market, they're past the tipping point of their contract for this, and this should get them to this, you wouldn't need to do it that way. And that has to be a better model to do what I call less abrasive selling against no intent lead gen. So cool, I could probably still coach people to do that, but I won't, because we know that there's a better way. But yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, with everything that you're working on now and the success of Whiskey Wednesday, everybody tune in. But what do you think because I've just talked you through some of my learnings along this path of 20 years doing this now. What do you think some of the biggest things that you've learned to get to where we are right now?
Okay, let me make sure I understand this. The biggest things to learn to get to where we are now in terms of like
what you've learned.
What I've learned. Okay. Just test, take action. Like that's really the biggest thing, is just, you're gonna fail. So just accept that and just keep failing, but fail fast, and reiterate and change and look at things and do it smart and have a plan. Even I, you know, I'm not perfect at all these things. Sometimes I'm like, man, I should have planned better, because we start testing, right? And things just take off in a different direction than you maybe intended. So it is good to, you know, take action, but take planned action. That's all I can really say. Because honestly, like I started doing these live streams and people were like, like, honestly, one of the reasons I started is because I was like, I think BDEX should have a podcast. I think that
Yeah.
this will resonate with our audience. Our audience is listening to podcasts. So why don't we have a podcast? And so then it was like, well, have you ever done a podcast? I'm like, I know nothing about podcasts, So then I'm like, on my own time, I'm gonna figure this out. Like, I felt like the responsible thing to do. Plus I just wanted to do it anyway. So started with Riverside and met Eddie, and we started just like having these sales marketing alignment conversations. But it took me like taking action. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I had to accept the fact that I didn't know what I was going to do. So you just figure out the technicalities, and then everything else, flows, as long as you're doing something that, you enjoy and that you're knowledgeable about and that you can actually talk about. And then, as you've probably figured out, the best sort of interviews, often you don't have to talk at all. You're just asking questions and letting your guest shine. And so sometimes I think being a guest on a show is much harder than being the co-host. But we have to handle the technicalities and the production and all of that sort of thing. But you don't necessarily have to answer all the questions and know what to say. So you just have to know what to ask and understand who's coming. But I wouldn't have learned any of that if I just, like I said, wouldn't have taken action. And then from that, I was able to say, okay, yes, I do feel even more confident that I think BDEX needs a podcast. And I can, by that point I'd learn all the technicalities. We can make it a live stream, and then we could still like have it, syndicate whatever to all these other channels. So I'd figured out the technicalities, and that made it much easier to make decisions and move forward. And I'm glad we did. A couple weeks ago, we were like one of the top 50 marketing podcasts in Japan. So this is random I'm like, hey, we're on like episode 30 or something. And we're talking about really nerdy marketing data topics. We can get either really, depending on the guest, we'll either get really technical, or we'll get very much into like advertising jargon. And so like we have our niche, and I think within our niche, they appreciate that, which is what we wanted. So I think what I've learned in everything, and I've only described the podcast thing, but everything is just take action and try.
Yeah, excellent. That probably leads me to my next question. Like, what do you say to companies that don't realize the marketing advantage of having their own podcast and having their voice out there?
Well, welcome to 2023, other businesses, because nobody wants to scroll your 1,500 word blog to find anything anymore. So you better get some short form video. And if you're going to be smart about your short form video, you're going to have a podcast or a show that is an entire episode that'll live on YouTube and other places, and collecting SEO value there. But then your marketers can also learn, because they have to clip all those videos and listen to their thought leaders. But it just creates an abundance of content. And from that, you can transcribe that conversation and get your 1,500 plus word blog, if that's what you really want. But this is the way people are consuming content now. So all I have to say is you better get on board.
Yeah, unequivocally. But so one of the biggest things that I noticed, and tell me if I'm off base, you then have the access to people to tell their stories that you may not have immediately had access to in the first place. So that then builds you rapport within your key target audience, who, if you had your sales hat on, were just calling to say, hey, Jessie, do you need this? Or this is what I know is going to make it real for you. That's a different conversation to, Jessie, can you come on this show, tell your story, and talk about what's important to you? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Like that's a whole other point that like, I'll even admit, like, I don't know in terms of like, when I bring on guests to deconstructing data, I don't think that's a lead, in terms of like, I think a lot of people think of, I'm going to put on a podcast and I'm going to bring in all these guests and then I'm going to sell to these guests. So I just want to be really clear. I don't think that is the way to go. But like what you were saying, where it helps you sort of, build authority with your target audience and, your reputation. I think that in many ways is the way to go. And that's really the reason to do it. Your target audience, like I said, they're consuming content this way. So give them something to listen to that will, help you position your brand where you want to be with that target audience. And you're not selling. Like many times on the Deconstructing Data podcast, whenever I can, I will plug OmniIQ, because get it straight, we are there for revenue. And we are there to, help a company be profitable. And it's, so we're not just here to tell stories. There is a goal, but you can't make it all just about, selling a product and talking about your product. It has to be things that, like you said, are important to your audience, that will make them, respect you more, and maybe even want to like call you up because they saw you were talking with so-and-so, and that person, has a lot of whatever credentials. So, I think it's really important.
So I think that's what some of the companies that are resistant miss, because they don't know the dark social aspect of that. So, hey, Jessie, I saw you on this show. Do you think there'd be a chance to get me on the show? Or I'm going to put you in touch with someone because of what you said. So they've got no idea that happens. So if you're hitting it out of the park with that delivery, that will organically happen. But they don't know what they don't know. Yeah. Excellent. So what do you see for the future with sales and marketing alignment? Maybe let's just go there. Or what should happen in your eyes? Dangerous question.
I think every company's different, right? So it's like you can't, I always have a hard time like just saying one thing, because like, well, it just really depends on your business. But in general, I think that it has to start with leadership. But it's up to people under leadership to help inform leadership of these things. So, if that means sending them podcasts like, hey, can you listen to this? So I think this is super informative. Help educate them. So it's not just you, but how will it happen? There's going to have to be a level of education so that people understand the importance of it. And then, people are just going to have to change, and change is hard. And work together. I think that, who was posting about democratization today? I think it was Melissa Rosenthal. ClickUp. What did she say? But I think that, really democratizing things is becoming more important. But also businesses can see the value in that, in terms of like using your people to glean data from them. And, like they're all experts in what they're doing and why they're here. So ask them and get qualitative information from them, and learn from them. And I think that that's probably how a lot of it will start. Is it's going to have to bubble from bottom up, because marketers see it. We see what's happening. Like so a lead will come in from marketing attribution, like it says organic. Okay, that must be from the blog, right? No, it's like, then you ask them and it's like, oh, they heard about you on the podcast. And so like we see these things, so we just have to communicate that well and educate the leaders so that they'll want to align sales and marketing, because it's difficult to do without that leadership.
Yeah. I think that there's going to be, my perspective will be that change is going to cause disruption internally and externally, because the people at the top now can't see what we can see. So they have to be accountable to knowing what they don't know, so that they can then accept, if we can show these portions of self-reported attribution, maybe there is something there. But I think they have to first own the fact that they don't know that. So it's going to be a little bit tumultuous, maybe. But so with everything that you do with Whiskey Wednesday, and we working with so doing the data with Omni, you said, who do you think you can help the most with everything that you do? Maybe run us through that.
Who can I help the most with everything I do? Really, I let's see, with BDEX and Whiskey Wednesday. So BDEX primarily, we offer consumer data. So at BDEX, we can help marketers who are targeting consumers. We hope to very soon be able to do more with B2B data, and we can do some, but it's not our specialty. So at BDEX, we can really help consumer marketers and more now. Like it used to just be, we helped enterprise consumer marketers or large marketing agencies with like TV ads, essentially, like CTV. We have a partnership with TiVo, so we help TiVo, take TiVo data and help people build audiences to a full national scale to target different ads. But now with OmniIQ, we can help marketers at all levels who are targeting consumers. And so it's not just those who are targeting for TV with TV budgets, but those SMBs who need to work on their first party data as well right now. So that's who we can help at BDEX. Anyone who wants to stay on their audience from a consumer level, because even B2B sometimes wants to understand, what their audience is purchasing and what their behaviors are and those types of things. At Whiskey Wednesday, we're more of a B2B focus where we help salespeople, marketing people. We say the best salespeople are marketers, the best marketers are salespeople. Because really it's like one and the same, but who do we help there is we help different SaaS brands or also people who want to target sales and marketers in the B2B tech space, especially SaaS. We've had some pretty awesome sponsors, and we draw a crowd talking about these hot topics, and we bring in guests who are, either up and coming on LinkedIn or who are really big on LinkedIn, like Justin Welsh or Corporate Bro, and I'm excited to have on Melanie Borden and a bunch of women in January. But, like today we have Sarah Brazer and Todd Klauser. So just fun names. And we bring on marketers and salespeople. And then we ask them like to pick the topic so that they feel jazzed to talk about it around sales and marketing alignment. That's why the only one we always have to cross out is should sales report to marketing. Everyone, wants to talk about this. We talk about it so much and it really triggers people. But that draws a crowd, and that's how we help brands get in front of those crowds, because I think there are a lot of brands who want to get behind this message that we should be talking about these things. And also we help educate a lot of, SDRs and marketing managers, and we're providing courses as gifts and giveaways. And we're sharing a lot of knowledge with the audience, and that's what makes it fun. And I think that's what makes brands want to put their name on it. But so we help the B2B tech SaaS space, primarily entry level as our audience, but our guests oftentimes end up being some of our sponsors. So they end up being more like founders and executives as well.
Awesome. Well, do you have any final thoughts for the listeners?
Any final thoughts for the listeners?
Any controversial things you want to put out there? I'm kidding. But
I mean, I don't really care. At this point, I've already said, I do think that sales should report to marketing. And, I do think that marketers should take an interest in sales too. I think that marketers need to sit on sales calls. I think that they need to have a full understanding of who sales is reaching out to. I think a lot of companies now have very minimum of the full enterprise type of sellers, but I don't know, many don't still. But even when they are separated to that degree, it's going to be to the company's advantage to have an alignment so that marketing is still touching the same contacts that those enterprise people are calling. Because of course, if they have 40 impressions before those enterprise people are even calling them, it's going to be to the benefit of the company. So my message would be, if we can't get them to work together, then just put it under marketing. So then marketing at least knows everything that's happening.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'd probably go further and say that all of the actions that are customer facing, as well as customer acquisition, should be part of revenue. So marketing should provide, as I said earlier, these are the targets, this is the compelling reason, this is the educational content, this is where they need to be struck within the buying cycle. Sales, say this, do this, get there. And this is also why it's going to benefit downstream, that there won't be a churn problem. So if we do this, we're unified in that approach. then you're also targeting advertisements to the people that they're reaching out to in one motion. So if we did that, we wouldn't have any of the problems we have right now. But that's not the way that most businesses operate. So yeah.
Transparency thing. You know, it doesn't matter who reports to who at the end of the day, in my opinion. You know, if you have to get to that point, then you have to. And I think that's where a lot of people are. Well, maybe like SDRs and BDRs, because like, what is marketing? You know, well, it's introducing brands to their buyers. So BDRs are often doing that in SDRs. And so I do think that that level of sales should definitely live under marketing. But the enterprise level, I can see where it doesn't. But at the end of the day, if there's transparency and everybody knows what's going on, then that means that the company is working together toward a common goal. And I think that, you know, obviously that's where we want to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for some absolute hot topics here today. If the audience has loved what you've said as much as what I have, where's the best places to contact you and divulge all your content?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. You can also find me on TikTok. But if you want to email me about BDEX, you can reach me at jessie@bdex.com, or Whiskey Wednesday, reach me at jessie@reveting.com.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jessie. I appreciate your time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you, like me, have received great value from my guest, please like, share, and follow. See you next time.